I recently posted a process for this video right here, and I also shared this photo on Reddit, Instagram, and a few other platforms. And I got a lot of questions asking about the tools I used, what colors I had, what the palette was, what the sketchbook was, what the paintbrushes were. And I decided to make a video breaking all of that down. And this is all going to be specifically with a focus on keeping things minimal, because one thing that I like to do, regardless of what medium I'm painting with, be it watercolor, gouache, acrylics, or oil, I like to keep things as simple and streamlined as possible, because that reduces the friction that goes between me wanting to paint and me actually starting to paint. Because if you have to set up an easel and have all these tools, sometimes you're just not going to bother. So the simpler the setup, at least for me, the more likely I am to actually use it and paint whenever I feel like doing it. Okay, let's start with the sketchbook. This is a Talon's art creation sketchbook. It's about 8.5 by 5.5 inches. This is about $10. I got a bunch of them from my local Michael's, which was getting rid of them. I got 5 of them in different sizes for like 12 bucks. But even at $10, it's a really fantastic sketchbook. I had never used them before I got all those ones from Michael's, and now I'm a complete convert. I will recommend these sketchbooks anytime I get a chance to. The paper is somewhat smooth. This is sort of mixed media paper. I'm not sure exactly what the thickness of it is. I'm not going to say I think, because I don't know. But it takes water media very, very well, as you can see. It buckles a little bit, of course, but not to the point of being unusable. You can see that it's perfectly fine, especially once you close it up and you leave it sitting there for a little while. It'll flatten out just fine. And that's one of the reasons why I like using it. I had a few people ask me why not use watercolor paper. And number one, it tends to be more expensive, especially if you want high quality watercolor paper, like pure cotton and all that. And number two, there's just more pages. And I made another video talking about just making a lot of painting, just not worrying about wasting materials. And this is key in that, having something that's affordable, that gives you a lot of pages to work with, or whatever it is that you're painting on. It makes it more likely that you'll actually paint. So that's one reason why I like this. Number two, let's go with this. This is my watercolor palette, which I've had for years. This is probably 7+ years old, and it's still holding up. It's a little banged up. It's metal. All of these things are going to be linked down in the description, by the way, if you want to go and grab one for yourself. One thing I want to mention about this that somebody actually pointed out in the comments of my previous video is that these 4 corner pans, the plastic things that hold the paint, obviously you can tell that this is not a perfect 90-degree corner. So what I had to do, I'm going to zoom in here, if I can figure out, hello, there we go. If you can tell, I had to melt that little pan with a lighter and then just squish it until I literally just, I'm trying to zoom out. I took it, lit it up, warmed it up so that it would become a little bit malleable, I guess. And then I just like pressed it really, really hard on, I don't know, a table, marble counter or something, to get that shape so that it would fit in there. It took a while, but I mean, they're in there. They're not going anywhere. So it was worth it. And I also used a little bit of this, just regular basic sticky putty, to keep those pans inside the palette. So just on the underside, there are just little bits of that, so that you can just like press it down and it'll hold it in place. And over time, the paint that sort of settles in between the cracks is going to act as a glue. So these are not going anywhere. They're solidly in there. So that's the setup that I have. I'm going to show you a couple of other things later, but first I want to go through the actual setup that I've used in that video. Next up, let's talk about my pencils, I guess. These are my 3 most used pencils. This is a Staedtler mechanical pencil. This is by Koh-i-Noor. I have never figured out how to pronounce their names. Koh-i-Noor, whatever. You can tell. You can read it there. And this is by Otto. This one is I got this like a week ago. I saw somebody on Instagram using it, and I loved the way it looked, and I had to buy it. It's actual wood, which is super cool. I had to put some tape on it because the bit at the top here, which comes off so you can replace the lead, it shakes, and it made this like clinking noise that was driving me kind of crazy. So I did that. But these are the main pencils that I use. It's just a little variety of thickness and whatnot, and they're nice. I like mechanical pencils because, again, keep it simple. It means that you don't have to bring a pencil sharpener. These two actually, or sorry, no, not this one, but this one actually has, if I can actually pull it open. Oh my gosh, never mind. I have to screw it. You can't tell, but it has a pencil sharpener built in, which now I can't. As you can tell, this video is very improvised. It has a pencil sharpener in there. You can tell that there's like lead coming down on my finger. So this is very convenient. I really love that. I'm gonna, I'll clean that up later, I guess. So those are the pencils that I like to use. Again, I mean, it doesn't really matter what pencil you use. It's really personal preference. And then we have, sorry, a bunch of lead on my sketchbook. And then we have these. These are by far my favorite water brushes. These are by Pentel. They're called Aquash water brushes. And they're, as you can tell, let me find one that actually has water in it. You just open them up like that. You fill them with water, and then they have synthetic bristles, and you can use them. You can see, hopefully I'll just squeeze out some water. That's it. And the way I use them, they're a little bit, they can be a little inconvenient because you don't have as much control over how much water you have in your mix as you would with a regular brush, of course, because there's always a little bit of water coming out, even if you're not squeezing. But with a little bit of experience, you can get used to having a little bit more control over it. But again, convenience, that's the name of the game for me. I really love these. Even though I have a bunch of other brushes here, I have a few other favorite brushes that I use that are just regular watercolor brushes. Now I'll show you a couple of things about these too later. But again, these are very convenient. They come in different sizes, which I marked right here, small, medium, large, so that I know, what size they are. So those are the brushes. And then let's talk about the actual pigments. I'm hoping some of you guys can help me with this because I was swatching these because, of course, I knew there's some of you who would probably love swatches. And in fact, I'm gonna show you a good shot of this so you can pause it right now and, write down all the names of all the things. The letters you see here represent the brand. So D is Daniel Smith, W is Winsor & Newton, and M is M. Graham watercolors. So M. Graham, Daniel Smith, and Winsor & Newton. These are my primary ones. Oh, forgot. There's another one, Holbein. That's literally the one Holbein color that I have. As I was saying, I keep forgetting. I was swatching these, and I could not figure out what color this is. I went through all of the watercolors that I have, which you can see down there. I could not find a color that matched this. And I don't know if I used it all up and I don't have the tube anymore. I just have no idea what color it is. I think I narrowed it down to Lunar Blue, Mayan Dark Blue, or Prussian Blue by Daniel Smith, but I don't know. It's a beautiful color, that's the thing. And I hate that I have no clue what it is. The colors I have here are Neutral Tint, Moon Glow, Ivory Black, Buff Titanium, Naples Yellow, Cadmium Yellow, Ultramarine Blue, an unknown color, Ultramarine Turquoise, Burnt Sienna, Quinacridone Deep Gold, Yellow Ochre, Perylene Green, Olive Green, Green Gold, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Quinacridone Rose, Cadmium Red Deep, Indigo, Oxide of Chromium, Van Dyke Brown, Transparent Red Iron Oxide, Winsor Violet or Dioxazine Purple, and Gray of Gray. These are all the colors that I have. Now, I don't really use most of these colors. In fact, well, not most of them, but I don't use a lot of them. For example, Ivory Black, I haven't touched in a very long time. I don't even know why it's on there because I don't really use black in my paintings almost at all. I do use it a little bit when I paint with acrylics, but it's not with watercolors. However, I forgot that I owned this. This is called Bloodstone Genuine. And it's like, I'm just going to show you because I swatched them side by side so that I could show you the difference. This is Ivory Black by Winsor & Newton. This is Bloodstone Genuine by Daniel Smith. And you can just look at how much better that is. It's not quite black. It has a very subtle purplish hue to it, like very, very subtle. It shows more on camera somehow than it does in real life. But I just love this so much. I'm a big fan of granulation in watercolors personally. I know some people hate it. I love it, so sue me for it, I guess. But I just really love the way it looks. So I will probably just scoop out all that black and just replace it with this just because it's so much nicer. And when it comes to darkening pigments or mixes, it's helpful to not use black because black generally tends to desaturate and just sort of mud up the colors. So having something that's a little bit more chromatic, that has a little bit more pigment and color in it, I think that would be really, really nice. Now, a couple of others. Moon Glow. Okay, first of all, let's talk about my favorites. Absolute favorites that I could not live without. Moon Glow, Quinacridone Deep Gold, Green Gold, Olive Green, Pearlin Green. Those are probably it. And I want to show you, just because you need to understand what Moon Glow means to me. Look at this color right here. I don't know if you can tell, but it has these beautiful, it's almost shimmering. It has this almost prismatic effect where it has, the base is just a sort of dark purple, but there's a lot of pinks and these bluish turquoise tones, and it's such a beautiful color. The other two that I was going to show you, these are the ones that I cannot figure out this color. I tried to, so you can tell how many colors I tried to put it next to figure out if one of the tubes that I had was actually it. This is the closest I could find, which was Prussian Blue by Winsor & Newton, but it's not it. Like, it's these two. These are two different colors. It's hard to tell on camera maybe, but it's very obvious in person that they're just not the same color. And I just cannot figure out what it is. So I'm hoping if some of you have a color that looks like that and you know what it is, most likely it's going to be by either Winsor & Newton or Daniel Smith, because those are generally the colors that I like to use. So if you have any idea, please let me know, because I'm going crazy trying to figure that out. Buff titanium is really nice. I know some watercolor purists will tell you never to use white or never to use, even off-white colors. I'm not a watercolor purist. I've used gouache in my watercolors. Send the watercolor police to me. I don't care. I love this color. I'm a big fan of just earthy, neutral tones in general. They just look really nice to me. So, transparent red iron oxide, burnt sienna, even Van Dyke brown to an extent, even though I don't really use it that much. But I'm a big fan of those. Green gold is a fantastic color. I don't use greens for any of when I paint with acrylics, gouache, or oils, I literally do not own more than one or two green colors. Because I like to mix them, because most of the green pigments that I found within, for acrylics, oils, and gouache are just not that good. But for watercolors, I don't know what it is about them, but they're just so much better. And these three are fantastic colors. This is a very dark, almost indigo green. And these two are very similar. This is just more of a desaturated, earthy one. This is extremely punchy, really beautiful color. Especially, you can mix a little bit of ultramarine turquoise in it, maybe a touch of cadmium yellow or some other sort of yellow, and it's gonna really, really stand out. Now, a couple others that I don't have in here, but I do own, that I wanted to share with you. There's, oh, never mind, that one I do have in there. That's dioxazine purple. There's cobalt violet, which is a much, it's a much pinker version of this. I don't know what I'm pointing at right here. It's a very purplish purple, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful color. Can you focus? Thank you very much. But again, I don't use it as much. When I did have it, the reason why you can see that I actually did use quite a bit of it, I used it to add a little bit of color variety to my paintings. So when I painted landscapes and whatnot, I just like to touch a bit of this into my greens, into my browns, into my blues, just because it just made them a little bit more lively. So that's the primary reason why I even have this. I also have cadmium orange, which is really great to have. I don't really paint. I don't really need orange that much anymore, but it's a great color. This is quinacridone red, which is very, very similar to this quinacridone rose. I actually have them both right here. You can tell this is quinacridone rose. This is quinacridone red. Sorry, no, other way around. Quinacridone rose, quinacridone red. So this is, you can tell this is a little bit more red. This is a little bit more purple. This is it's a little warmer, and I actually really like this. I might just switch this in place of this. So that's that. And what else? I have cobalt green here, which I don't really use, but this is a really good, very turquoise. So much more turquoise than this. This is great for example, if you need to paint like shallow tropical water type thing. This would be a good example of a purpose for it. So I was editing that video and I realized that I forgot to mention something very important when it comes to colors, and that is that if you are just starting out, whether with watercolors, with painting in general, or any other medium, you do not need nearly as many colors. In fact, I would highly recommend that you don't get this many colors, or even half the amount of colors I have in here. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one is that you don't know if you're going to stick with that medium. Maybe you think that you're going to like watercolors, and then you start painting with acrylics and you realize that you like acrylics a lot more, and you stop painting with watercolors, and that'll be a bunch of money that you wasted on tubes that you never will use again. Number two is the fact that they cost a lot of money. I looked up some of these Daniel Smith colors earlier, and they can go for, $12, $15, $16. So it adds up really quickly. You can easily spend a few $100s on a full set of colors. And number three, you don't know what colors you'll actually use until you start using them. So what I recommend you do instead is start with a basic color palette. There, you can use a primary palette or a split primary palette. Those are the two common ones, but there's a bunch of different palettes. There's the Zorn palette, for example. You can just Google, beginner palette, insert medium here, and just find different examples. But a primary color palette consists of one of each primary color. So that could be any color that you want. You could go with Naples yellow, you could go with cadmium yellow, you could go with lemon yellow, yellow ochre, whatever, something that's yellow. And then you would have a blue and a red. And then you can add white. That's usually for other mediums. You wouldn't really do that with watercolors, but you could add maybe buff titanium or something. And usually I like to add in a couple of earth tones. So usually I would go for either raw umber and burnt sienna or something like that, because they're kind of different. They have different uses, and they're good extra colors to have that are not really within the primaries, but they can help you with browns, they can help you desaturate colors, and they have a lot of different uses. And then a split primary palette is essentially the same thing, except you have two of each primary. You have a cool version and a warm version of each primary color, plus again, white and some other tones that you might want. So you can look up what pigments, what colors are cool and warm. But for example, in the case of yellow, that would be maybe a Naples yellow and a lemon yellow, or yellow ochre and lemon yellow, or cadmium yellow medium, cadmium yellow light. Those would be warm and cool. And by having a warm and cool version of each of the three primary colors, that would allow you to mix almost every color you need. So you'll be able to mix purples, you'll be able to mix greens, browns, oranges, et cetera, et cetera. And the advantage of that is that you won't need nearly as many colors. You'll be able to start off with just 3 or 6 colors and be on the way to success. And then as you keep painting, you'll slowly start to realize, oh, I wish I had this color or that color, right? For example, with those two palettes, you'll have a very hard time mixing something like a quinacridone rose or a Windsor violet or a, what was that cobalt violet. There are some colors that you just can't really mix from those primary colors, but you will be able to mix most. And once you figure out that there are some colors that you really want that you just can't quite mix, then you can go ahead and buy those. And as you figure out that, oh, most of my paintings tend to be green, or most of my paintings tend to be warm, yellow, red, whatever, then you can invest in some more pigments within that family, right? You might want to buy some cadmium oranges, or you might want to buy some more shades of blue or green or whatever it may be. So that's my recommendation. It'll save yourself money and it will allow you to get started. And on top of that, the really big bonus is that it's going to teach you how to mix your colors. And mixing your colors is 9 times out of 10 better than using colors straight out of the tube anyway. One last thing that I did show in that video is this right here. This is just a simple bulldog clip. This is by X-Acto, like the guys that make the knives. This is just handy for when you need to hold your sketchbook open, just like that. But you can use anything else. You can use regular binder clips if you want to. They do the same thing. You can use these little plastic clamps, which I love. They come in all sorts of sizes. They're very cheap too. And they're so useful. You can use them for all sorts of different things, including what I'm going to show you after this. So these are very convenient. What I was going to show you is how I like to clip my palette to my sketchbook. Now, the fact that this perfectly matches the size of the sketchbook is that's just random. I did not plan that, but it does, and that's fantastic. So what you can do is you can grab this right here. This is a medium-sized binder clip, or yes, binder clip. You can get much bigger ones that would actually, you can actually clip all the way across much more easily than this, but this one can still do it. But just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to clip a few pages instead. So that's what you would do, right? So it can hold it for you and it doesn't slip around as much. Now it's still going to slip a little bit, but you can play around with the positioning. Usually this side makes it a little easier for it to not slip around. It holds it better. Again, it's still going to slip, but I'm talking about, painting while you're on a bench or something like that. It's going to be perfectly fine. You can hold the other page or the other thing like this. Obviously, you're going to miss out on some mixing area, but it is what it is. Or you can use, again, this. This is the same concept. You can just put it right there or wherever else. And again, it's just going to hold it in place for you. The last thing I wanted to share is this. This is a Nalgene bottle. It is a wide mouth bottle. I'm not sure what. This is 4 ounces. So these are great because it's very sturdy plastic. I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but it's sturdy. The water is not going to go anywhere. You can throw these at a wall. You can throw them down the street. They will not pop open. They're extremely secure. And these are great if you don't want to use these. You just want to use a regular brush, especially if you want to go out and about and bring a little bit of water but not have a ton of it. These are fantastic. I usually bring a couple. So to sum it all up, we got the sketchbook, we have the paint, and then we have the brushes, which again, more often than not, I just go with one. Sometimes I go with medium, sometimes I go with large. And I may have mentioned this in another video, but I like to work with larger brushes that I need because it forces me to paint faster by foregoing the details. If you're painting with this tiny little brush, you're going to be a lot more likely to paint tiny details than if you were to paint with this thing, right? So it's a lot easier to paint quickly and loosely when you're working with something larger. And then finally, again, a pencil of your choice just to jot down the initial sketch and get it done. And this right here, probably without this too, this is basically it when I paint with watercolors. All the paintings that I've been doing lately have used this kind of setup. Again, sometimes I use a different pencil or whatever, but that's basically it. Once again, all the supplies that I talked about are going to be linked down in the description, so make sure you check that out. And do leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know if it was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next time. Bye.